Now, some of the detained activists are believed to be held in the southern parts of Israel at Khayelihle prison. Israel, of course, facing widespread reactions, including condemnation, on Thursday after its military intercepted those vessels, including activists who also comprise of Swedish campaigner Greta Thunberg. Let's get you more responses to what's taken place so far. Khayelihle Khumalo is our reporter who's tracking the story and is standing by to speak with Israel's deputy head of mission. Kaya?
Well, certainly, under quite a very important time, especially because we know that quite a number of these activists are from South Africa and in so many countries. But really just to gauge in terms of the latest, we do have Israel's Deputy Head of Mission here in South Africa, Ariel Seidman. So once again, sir, thank you so much for your time and welcome to SABC.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely. I suppose the very first question is, where are these activists? Are they safe? Are they fine? Their families are very concerned about their safety at this point.
Yeah, so photos of them have been posted on the Israeli official sites, taken care of. They're doing very well, and they will be deported to Europe, to a European country, as per the official statements.
And just, Ariel, obviously, we've seen the statement from the South African authorities, the president, where he denounced this, in fact, accusing Israel of violating the international law. These activists were still sailing across the international waters. What do you make of that?
So it's important to explain that according to international law, according to the laws of armed conflict, naval blockade is allowed in certain scenarios of armed conflict. And unfortunately, Israel is in a scenario of armed conflict since Hamas terror regime took over Gaza in 2007. I also want to remind you of the Palmer report. After the 2010 incident of the flotilla, the UN Secretary General appointed an inquiry, a panel of inquiry, and unofficially called the Palmer report. And they concluded that the blockade was legal and was according to international law.
So, Ariel, one of the primary reasons why these activists undertook this massive and colossal exercise was to highlight the predicament in Gaza, the starvation of the people, where we get reports that the aid is not distributed. What do you make of those statements?
So, even from your question, it is very clear that this was not an aid flotilla. There's actually a video from the Israeli police boarding the flotilla looking for the aid, and there is no aid on these ships. Furthermore, other countries, Italy, Greece, even the Vatican, suggested that they would take the aid and distribute it, and the flotilla organizers did not agree to it. They rejected the offer. And when you go back a little bit, there's also evidence of Hamas being in contact with the organizers of this flotilla. So, as you mentioned, this flotilla is not an aid flotilla. It's not a humanitarian aid flotilla. It's more of a PR stunt. And as you mentioned, it's a stunt in order to raise awareness to a situation.
Very symbolic mission also, Ariel, but also we've seen quite a number of international bodies, whether you look at the recent reports by the UN Commission, headed by Judge Naval Pillay, talking about these atrocities, but also painting a very bleak picture about the current situation in Gaza. And what's the response of the Israeli authorities?
The situation in Gaza is terrible. The people in Gaza are suffering, and there's no denying. And they are paying a very, very heavy price for this war and for what's happening. But you cannot ignore the context in where Israel is fighting a terror regime which attacked Israel, attacked civilians, and is using their own population as human shields. They are hiding behind civilians, behind children. They're setting up command centers under hospitals. They're shooting out of schools, out of mosques. And Israel finds itself in a terrible situation where they're fighting this enemy embedded in the civilian population. And Israel is doing its best to avoid harming civilians. Unfortunately, it's impossible to avoid it completely. And also, I have to say, Israel has been facilitating aid into Gaza during war. So Israel is facilitating humanitarian aid to the enemy during war. This says everything about Israel's intent, and Israel is trying to fight Hamas, not the people of Gaza. And that's a very clear distinction for us.
Maybe, Ariel, let's go back to the activists. Their families are worried about their conditions. Are they in good conditions? And just in terms of their release, when are they expected to be released? Do we have like a time frame?
So I don't have a time frame. We've seen a few of these flotillas in the past, and they've always been taken care of very well, and been released very swiftly. So I don't think there's any cause to worry. As I said, there are photos of them, been released, they're taken care of, and they will be released within a short time.
Is there genocide unfolding in Gaza?
How do you describe genocide?
Well, I mean, you look at it's well documented. You look at these international bodies, whether it's Amnesty International, whether it's Human Rights Watch, and you look at also, the ICJ case, where we're still awaiting for the comprehensive findings. I mean, the indications are there that it's a very untenable situation.
As I said, people are suffering, and a lot of people are dying. That's war. Not in every war, when a lot of people die, that's not genocide. Genocide, you have to have intent to kill a population. And going back to what I said before, Israel is distributing aid, is facilitating aid into Gaza. There's no intent to kill people of Gaza who are not Hamas. But as said, it is a very difficult situation with a terror organization that is embedded in a civilian population. So people are getting hurt. But of course, there's no intention. And if you look now at the peace process and the peace agreement that was offered by President Trump and endorsed by the Arab and Muslim country, Israel immediately said yes. Israel wants to end this war. Israel wants to live in peace with its neighbors. Israel has signed peace treaties with its neighbors before, be it Egypt, Jordan, the Abraham Accords. So far, Hamas has been refusing to every agreement, and we are waiting for the response on this one.
What did you make of those developments at the UN General Assembly? We saw the United Kingdom, we saw France, we saw so many countries, Canada, Australia, pushing for the two-state solution, but essentially, to all intents and purposes, recognizing the right of statehood for Palestinians.
I just think that we need to make a very clear distinction between Palestinians and Hamas. This war is against Hamas. It's against Hamas terror regime. This war is not
what
against
about the civilians who are bearing the brunt?
It's a terrible situation, as every war is. As I mentioned, Israel is not targeting civilians. Israel is doing all it can to avoid hurting the civilians, as opposed to Hamas, who is targeting the civilians, who is firing into civilians, same as the missiles that came from Iran and the missiles coming from Yemen, from the Houthis in Yemen. They're targeting Israeli civilians, whereas Israel is targeting Hamas terrorists and doing all it can to avoid harm to civilians. So this is very different than a Palestinian state, which is a legitimate conversation on its own, nothing to do with Hamas.
And Ariel, before I let you go, so now this peace deal proposed by the US President Donald Trump, are you quite optimistic it's going to work? What's the feeling on the ground?
I don't know if I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful. As everyone in Israel is, we all want this war to end, and we would love to live in peace with our neighbors. Right now, it depends on Hamas, and we're all waiting for their reply. As I said, it was endorsed by the Muslim countries, by the Arab countries, who are a lot of the backbone of Hamas and their support. So hopefully, with their support, we could get it through and get Hamas to agree. And of course, release the 48 Israeli hostages who are still in Hamas tunnels.
All right. Ariel Seidman, thank you so much indeed for your time. Of course, I under that, the deputy head of the mission of Israel here in South Africa, really talking about a very burning global issue. We saw those marches calling for the immediate release of the activists. Some are South Africans. Of course, we've seen that one of them is the grandson of the founding father of South Africa's republic. That is Mandla Mandela. So with that, back to you, Ayanda.
Khayelihle, Khumalo, thanks very much indeed. A story which we'll certainly keep watching as it continues to unfold.